we certainly have a clear reason to think about the risk-risk approach. What is the risk of using or even contemplating solar radiation modification versus not doing that and yet going slow in terms of climate action? And what we will have to weigh up those risks. But once we accept that risk-risk approach, we will still be left with multiple stages at which governance has to kick in. Stage one is the governance of indoor research, the laboratory-based research around solar radiation modification. Stage two is the governance of outdoor experimentation of solar radiation modification, where some argue that should not happen at all, and others argue that is a natural evolution of the scientific process. A third area is the potential use of solar radiation modification, and whether those decisions can be taken legitimately, whether we have clarity on who is proposing such projects, whether we have transparency about the impacts, and so forth. And then finally, if solar radiation modification were to be used at all, the kinds of challenges that might emerge, whether it's impact on precipitation, on biodiversity, and a range of other issues, including the moral hazard issue. How do we deal with all of that? Now, the challenge again is that, like the issue of oceans, in the context of solar radiation modification, we don't have international legal instruments that are binding obligations with regards to governance of solar radiation modification research or deployment. We do have some governments across the world that are thinking about national programs and policies, which have their associated rules and regulations attached to them. And we have groups of scientists and non-state actors on either side of the equation coming up with codes of conduct or calls for prohibition of any of such kind of work. And therefore, we have to think again about designing governance frameworks that facilitate responsible research, that guide any kind of outdoor experimentation while transparently engaging with the wider public, that integrate SRM, and I would argue even CDR, into the broader suite and spectrum of climate responses, that balance the commercial interests with the governance concerns, especially when we think about a public good approach, and that is able to create a platform or frameworks or systems through which disputes can be resolved.